Hey, everybody, what's going on? Keith Niebuhr with Gators Online to talk a little bit about the Florida Gators with Nick Delatorre, senior writer, beat reporter extraordinaire. He's covered the Gators for many years, and that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to talk Gators, Talkin Gators. In fact, we might even call it that. Nick, we're thinking about just calling this Talkin Gators. Yeah.
Hey, but let's cut to the chase. Talking Gators, Keith.
Just a couple of morons talking Gators. So let's get right to it. You've covered the Gators for a long time, and when we dissect things in the preseason, one of the biggest things people want to know is, hey, who are the key transfers, like guys that are going to make impacts? I know they've got a bunch of transfers. I know that there's a bunch of newcomers, a bunch of freshmen, all that, but all these transfers in this new portal era, of the guys coming in, who is going to play for my team? Who's going to make an impact and help my team be better this season? So, Nick, you've identified 5 guys. Some of them are obvious. Some of them may not be obvious. So let's get right to it. Obviously, Graham Mertz. Okay, very big impact. I mean, we're not telling people anything they don't know. But look, he's the starting quarterback. He is a transfer from Wisconsin. Highly rated guy out of high school, Nick. Never really saw his career took off in Madison, Wisconsin. The Gators are kind of hoping to catch lightning in a bottle. Smart guy. He's been there got there last semester, spring semester. The teammates have gravitated toward him. We're hearing a lot of good things. What can you tell me about Graham Mertz?
The biggest thing, and members on our site will say, Nick, you've been down on Graham. But the biggest thing I think with Graham is he was the highest rated quarterback to ever sign with Wisconsin out of high school. The highest rated since Russell Wilson, who transferred in. There was a lot of pressure on a young Graham Mertz's shoulders. Everything that transpired at Wisconsin is known. You know exactly what happened. Graham was asked in his first availability after being named the starter, what happened at Wisconsin? Why did you not do that? Did you essentially you got a coach fired? What happened there? And I thought he handled that well. I think the biggest thing with Graham, Billy Napier says it all the time, 32 starts, 2,500 plus snaps. I didn't see that in the spring. And I think Graham was still learning the playbook. As you go into summer, Graham was the one leading the offensive guys in OTAs. He was the one texting receivers, hey, tomorrow, IPF, we're going to throw. So that leadership quality, even though he wasn't named the starter, he was already carrying himself as if he'd been at Florida and as if he was the starter. When we get into fall camp, now I start to see, okay, he's making the right reads. He's making the right checks. He's accurate with the football from 3 to 7 yards. As much as I love Anthony Richardson and as high as I was on Anthony Richardson, some of those 104-mile-an-hour fastballs that were getting dropped on 4-yard slants, 5-yard ins and outs, Graham is taking some off of that. He's not going to give you what Anthony did running the football, but I think he's going to be more of a game manager. And I don't know I don't mean it as the dirty word or the dirty term that a lot of college football fans or football fans in general think that it is. You just need Graham to not turn the ball over. That was an issue at Wisconsin. You need Graham to get you out of bad plays. Hey, if we've been running the ball really well and now they've got 8 in the box, Graham, we need you to check out, or we need you to hit a play action pass. So they need him just to manage the games. And I think what I've seen from Graham in the summer and now into fall camp is his knowledge of the playbook is there, which is allowing him to play faster and get the offense into spots that it needs. You don't need him to be Anthony Richardson. I think the maturity level that Graham has is kind of what won him out. He knows who he is. He knows what he needs to be inside the offense. And I think that's the biggest thing and really the reason why Graham won out over Jack Miller and Max Brown.
All right, Nick, in a nutshell, the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh. The Lord giveth a guy that can complete the short passes, the intermediate passes, can be accurate, can be a game manager, but the Lord taketh. Where are the chunk plays going to come from in the passing game? Can Graham Mertz be that guy? And obviously Florida's receivers were great last year outside of Ricky Pearsall. They got some young guys. Are they going to be ready? We can get into that on another show. But can Graham Mertz complete enough big plays? Because, look, Nick, you and I have talked about this. 80 yards in 17 plays is hard to do in the SEC. It's going to be hard to do at Utah, okay? So it's going to be hard to do against Florida State. So can they get enough chunk plays? And obviously, if you're hitting deeper passes here and there, you don't have to hit that many. It's also going to help open up things in the running game too, all that stuff, yada, yada, yada. But can he be that guy? Look, in the spring, he didn't look great in the spring game. You saw it. I saw it. looked a lot better at that practice we were at, though, a couple of weeks ago, that open practice. I thought he looked pretty good, to be honest with you.
You were even asking Zach now. You're like,
Yeah.
hey, am I crazy? Am I seeing this?
Yeah.
Is this the
Well,
same guy?
that's another argument. But yeah, I mean, can he be the guy? Can he be this guy that can complete long passes here? They're in a nutshell, because we got some other guys we got to talk about.
Yeah, I think so. So Florida's bread and butter, the engine of the car that you're going to watch in the fall is going to be the running attack. I think you have a solid 5 starters on the offensive line. You've got 2 returning starters who have 16 touchdowns and more than 1,500 rushing yards in a junior and a sophomore. You brought in a freshman. You brought in a senior. You've got a ton of talent there. I think what you need Graham to do is notice when the defense starts creeping up, hey, you've got Arliss Boardingham. You've got Ricky Pearsall. You've got some freshman guys who are outlets for you. When the defense sinks in, and you're going to get man coverage now because they're committing more to the running attack, you need to be accurate when we dial that number up. You're not going to get 20 chances to throw the ball 30 yards a game, but when you get those 3 or 4, we need you to be accurate and hit those passes.
Okay, so there's some potential there. We'll see. We're going to find out in a couple of weeks. You and I and Zach are going to be out in Salt Lake City. You guys will be working a lot harder than me out there. All right, look, we got 4 more guys. We decided to go with 5. Mertz was the obvious one, but look, all eyes are on him. The next guy, look, Nick, you're around these guys all the time, but when I went to that open practice, I walked out on the field and I looked at one guy and holy Christ, this guy's huge. And it was Cam Jackson, 6'6", 300, listed at 371 pounds. God only knows when they list you at 371, you're thinking, oh man, I mean, it could be north of 400, but 6'6", 371, a transfer from Memphis where quite frankly, he was pretty doggone good. Pro Football Focus had him like 3rd team all conference in the AAC. I mean, look, the guy can play. All right. And we know that they were excited about him. What have you heard about Cam Jackson so far? What makes you think, based on what you've heard from talking to your sources and what you've seen with your own eyes, what makes you think he's going to be an impact guy this year?
Cam Jackson's a dude. Came in and is going to start for the Gators. Number 99 on the roster. He'll be number 1 in your heart on defense. This is a guy who's going to play with a mean streak. He came to Florida. He had a very successful career at Memphis. Felt I might not get looked at the same way in the AAC. Didn't have the feeling that if you're good enough, they'll find you. He believes, and we talked to him on Thursday, he believes I'm going to show up and I'm going to show people that the numbers I put up weren't because I was at Memphis. It wasn't because I was playing against lesser competition. I'm going to dominate against SEC players. And covering this league and this team for over a decade now, he looks like an SEC player. Certainly looks the part. So I think the biggest thing for me is Florida's defensive line as a whole is so much deeper with Caleb Banks and with Cam Jackson joining. You're not going to have to ask Cam to play 400 snaps. So go all out for those 350 snaps we're going to ask you to play this year. And I think Cam Jackson came in and instantly took a starting spot, and it'll be a guy that Florida fans maybe were a little bit excited about when he first committed, but will love by the time we get to November.
All right, next up. Now, look, I'm going to take you back to 2019, Nick, when you were only, I think, in your 40s back then. Back in 2019, you were single, by the way, back in 2019, I think. But Under Armour All-American game, there was a guy, we talked about Cam Jackson's body catching my attention. Well, this guy caught my attention too, but for the wrong reasons. It's Damien George. It was a high school All-American out of North Shore High School in Houston. Their quarterback had signed with Auburn, so I was down covering Auburn at the time and was at the Under Armour All-American game, and he did not have a great frame. I mean, the frame was okay, the build, there was flub. He just wasn't in great shape, baby fat. A lot of offensive linemen have it. Today, 6'6", 360 pounds, transfers in from Alabama, where he wasn't able to really make his mark there, but they felt like he had a lot of potential and was certainly progressing. And now at Florida, everybody expects that Damien George is going to be an impact guy on the offensive line at tackle. Tell me about his situation.
You probably remember the game. He was a starter for Nick Saban in that offensive line for the Crimson Tide in 2021, and he just had an Iron Bowl that he would like to have never have happened. If there is any footage left, he would like it wiped from the internet. He would like it gone. It lost him his starting job. Damien George went from a starter in 2021 to not starting last year and went to go find a team. Zach Alberverdi was speaking with Cole Kubelik at the SEC Media Days, and Cole told him Nick Saban did not want to lose Damien George, thought that highly of him. Obviously, the way Alabama recruits, maybe they had recruited over him a little bit, but thought that Damien George was a player that could play for them and is probably a future NFL player. He came in and has played right guard and right tackle with Keontae Goodwin leaving to be closer to his mother who's dealing with health issues. Damien George will be your starting right tackle. I think Florida feels really good on the bookends with Barber and George, and the Gators are, if I'm telling you that they're going to have to run the ball and that they have the horses that can run it, you need some guys up front to block. So I think Damien George is going to be a critical piece for Florida's offensive line, which has battled some health issues and some injuries, throughout the spring and fall camp.
All right, Nick, the next guy, look, I've been away. I've been gone 10 years, covering another program. But from talking to guys like you, and remember, I grew up in Gainesville, all my friends are Gator fans, I don't think they've been too thrilled entirely as a whole. There's been individual parts with the linebackers, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So you bring in a big transfer, though. Teradja Mitchell. I'm probably pronouncing his mispronouncing.
Florida's had a bunch of linebackers, Keith, that if they were born in 1950, might have been all pro NFL linebackers. Before the forward pass was invented, Florida's had some great linebackers. Yeah. Unfortunately, everyone in the SEC is going spread, and they have to cover tight ends, and it's been hard to watch.
Well, okay, so Teradja Mitchell comes in from Ohio State. And by the way, out of high school, we're talking about a guy that was a number 2 prospect in the state of Virginia, which Virginia's for lovers. It's also for ballers. That 7'5" area is unbelievable. Okay, unbelievable. Number 2 player in the state of Virginia. Number 5 linebacker in the country. Number 35 recruit overall in the country. At Ohio State, did some good things in 2021. Played in all 12 games, 8 starts, was a co-captain. But he's now at Florida, and we think he's going to be a guy that can be a big contributor on defense. So, Nick, what are they seeing in him so far? Are they excited about what he's bringing or can bring? And just kind of give us the overview of Teradja Mitchell, because that was a pretty big name when he transferred to Florida.
This is a guy and playing for Urban Meyer, being recruited by Urban Meyer. The players vote on captain, so he was chosen by his peers to be a captain of that team. I think he's battled injuries, and when we saw him in the spring, Florida kind of just put him in bubble wrap. What impressed me the most was Teradja Mitchell shows up, and he's on campus for maybe 3 weeks before spring camp starts. We walk out for the first open practice, and he looks like Steven Spielberg directing a major motion picture. He's calling out plays, calling out checks, pointing out to guys who have been on the team for 2-3 years, have played in the defense, have been in this program, telling them where they need to be. And to me, that just showed this kid transferred, young man, he's going into his 6th year, transferred, and understood, I have 1 more year to play. There's no time to waste. We're not going to the swamp and drinking beer. We're staying in, and we're learning this playbook, and we're going to make an impact. So that's really what stood out to me. As I've seen him play more in the fall, since he was pretty much in bubble wrap in the spring, I see great sideline to sideline speed. I don't know that he's going to be the guy that is the best in coverage. I think that's more Shamar James, but Teradja Mitchell has stepped up and really filled in the veteran void that I think you lost when Ventrell Miller was drafted by Jacksonville. And that's a voice that you need. You need your linebacker to not only lead by example, but to kind of be, have as much bark as he does bite and be able to lead vocally. And I think Teradja Mitchell has really filled in for Ventrell there. And he's going to, as long as he's healthy, he's going to start next to Shamar James at middle linebacker for the Gators. So huge role for him. And it'll be a player the Gators not only need to play well, but need to be on the field.
All right. So when I got back to covering Florida, I knew one thing. All right. Well, I knew more than one thing, but one thing in particular, I knew they had some running backs. Okay. Mm-hmm. I knew Florida had some damn good running backs coming back. Yeah. What I didn't know was anything about Cam Carroll. He's a transfer from Tulane. Now, back in 2019, he rushed for 364 yards. In 2020, he rushed for over 700 yards. 2021, over 500 yards. He was a solid player at Tulane. And I believe he might have also done special teams too. But last year he was injured. All right. So he comes into Florida and it's probably not one of those transfers that if you're a fan or someone like me, you're thinking that much about, because you know what the studs they're bringing back at running back, and you don't know much about him. So you don't even, one, know why they bring him in, and two, whether he can contribute. It turns out people think he's pretty good, and he probably is going to play a lot, and he's probably going to contribute. Nick, I almost called you Zach there. How about that? Nick, what can you tell us about this guy's situation? Am I reading too much into the chatter? Really, chatter. I'm talking to you and Zach. You guys have said, hey, keep an eye on this guy.
Yeah.
Why? How is this guy going to play? How is he making his way right now? How's he kind of sliding his way into the situation where he's going to be a guy that's counted on? What can he do?
Yeah, my first thought was let's check this guy for some early signs of CTE. Why would you, if you're a 6th-year player, or if you're a 5th-year player, and you only have 1 year of eligibility, this is not a sexy running back room to join. Go somewhere where you're either getting guaranteed a starting spot, or maybe they have some young guys and you'll fit in. I thought, this kid's crazy. Why would you come here? And then I watched him practice once, and I was like, okay, he can play. And then I watched him practice again. And then I watched him run over Florida's safeties. And then I watched him run past Florida's linebackers. I said, okay, Florida found someone here. And maybe this kid thinks, I'm going to bet on myself. I might not get 300 carries this year. I might not get 700 rushing yards this year just because of my usage. He told us, I was basically told I'll probably be the 3rd-string running back, but that wasn't even promised to me. So Cam Carroll thought, I will have the opportunity to play in the SEC, play at a school like the University of Florida, and I will be able to show what I can do against this level of competition. And he's made me look bad, because at first I said, there's no point in this kid coming to Florida. Not with my last year of eligibility. I wouldn't do that. Cam Carroll has shown me every time I see him that I'm going to play at Florida, and I'm going to play this year. He's their best pass catcher. He's a guy who I think they could use on kick return if they needed him to, and a guy who I think will be on a punt block team or kick return team, kick coverage team. So he's a guy who, one, came into a running back room with a junior, a sophomore, and a freshman, and I think is now providing them leadership. Hey, this is how we need to handle ourselves off the field. This is how you do it as a veteran. So Cam Carroll, I thought, was crazy to join the room, and now I think Florida's running back room will be better for it. And from a guy who I thought wouldn't sniff the field to a guy who I think now, I don't know how you keep him off of it, even considering you have Trevor Etienne and Montrell Johnson in the same room.
Florida actually, Nick, has a history of having guys that weren't really the 1 or 2 highest profile running backs on the roster at a given time to make the NFL. Lorenzo Hampton was one. You're a Dolphins fan, Nick. He was a 1st-round pick of the Dolphins. And he may have started, but he was there were times where he probably did start at Florida in the early 80s. But they also had guys, James Jones, John L. Williams, Neil Anderson. So he was sort of, at times, an afterthought. Another guy out of the 1970s, Earl Carr. I don't think he ever rushed for over 250 to 300 yards in a season. Played a couple seasons in the NFL. So it can happen. You get that opportunity. You're playing against the high-level competition, and maybe you can show them something. But anyway, 5 transfers that we think are going to have an impact. And look, there's probably going to be more. These are just kind of 5 that Nick has zeroed in on. I am Keith Niebuhr. That is Nick De La Torre. This is Talkin Gators with Gators Online. And before we go, one quick thing. We've got a special promo right now. You need to check it out. 1 month for $1 gets you in the door, right? And then after that, $74.99 for the year. But 1 month, $1. Come check us out at gatorsonline.com. Plenty of team intel, team insight, overall team coverage, and a lot of recruiting juice too. So again, I'm Keith. That's Nick. This is Talkin Gators, and we'll talk Gators again sometime soon. Take it easy, everybody.